Thank you very much indeed, Paul, and thank you for the invitation to be here with you this afternoon. My apologies for the slight delay. First of all, I want to begin by thanking all of you for the work that you have been doing, not just over the last few weeks, Paul and Tanya, but over many months and indeed many years. I recognise many people here who have put huge energy and effort into ensuring that this referendum will take place. And I know that so many of you are working so hard with your organisations who represent so many thousands of people and who represent so much experience on this issue. I know that you're doing everything possible to ensure that we have a high quality, informed debate on this topic over the next few weeks that are left to us. You're focusing today on turnout and making sure that people, first of all, know. We have a very busy media life, obviously, in this country. I don't mean politicians, I mean the media as such is full of so many different bits of news, so many different angles, so many different issues, and indeed at a busy time in the political cycle as well. It's very easy for people not to absolutely put it in their diary that Saturday the 10th of November is voting day. We really do have to focus, I think you're absolutely right, to focus on turnout, because I think it would be a wonderful statement at this moment in our history that a very high percentage of people came out and endorsed what we're putting to the Irish people. I think it means that you have a greater endorsement and priority for your work, and I believe that it also gives a strong message to government about the priority that children and young people and the kind of decisions that affect them should have in the future. So I do believe having a high turnout will be very important, a very important statement to this generation and to future generations about the centrality of the issues which we're trying to address in the referendum. And clearly we have a number of weeks to go yet, and I have taken absolutely nothing for granted. Let there be no complacency whatsoever. There is not one vote cast yet. We've had a very positive response to the wording. We've had a very encouraging debate across all of the parties and independents in the Dáil and the Senate. I believe a high quality debate that really showed a huge interest in these issues and showed a great commitment by politicians across the political divide to the referendum. However, that was in the Dáil and the Senate. It did not get much coverage outside of the Dáil and the Senate. It may well be picked up as we go on in terms of the contributions that different people made. But my point is we now have the real job, because this referendum does not belong to the politicians, it doesn't belong to the constitutional lawyers or any lawyers, it belongs to the people. And if it's to belong to the people in a really wholehearted way, the people have to understand it, they have to be informed properly about it, they have to know what's in the wording and what is not in the wording. And clearly there have been some claims made about certain aspects of the wording which are quite inaccurate, and we don't want that to continue. We want to make sure that that positive message about what is in the referendum gets out there and what people are being asked to do. So a very special plea to our young people who've called for so long, our young students. Well, the proof will be in the eating of the pudding. You know, let's hope we get a really high turnout from young people, from families. It's an opportunity for people to bring their children and young adults into the polling booth to show them democracy in action, and it's about them, it's about children. It's all about them, but we'll be deciding, the adults will be casting the vote. So agree with your focus on turnout today, but equally focus very much on high quality information and focusing on what is in the referendum and what is not in the referendum. That's really, really important that people are very clear about that. So I think it is a strong message to this generation and to future generations. And as I say, I want to thank each and every person who's in this room who has contributed so far to ensuring that we're at this point. I have been hugely supported in my work as a minister in this area. And it has been important that I've been at Cabinet and I've got the support of Cabinet and wholehearted support from government to put this amendment. It was in our programme for government, it was a priority, and as you said, Paul, we have delivered on it. We have delivered on agreeing a wording, putting a wording out there and giving the people the opportunity to vote on this. I don't need to go over with this audience the history and why it's needed. I think everyone in this room knows that. We know about the history, not just 20 years. I've started saying 20 years because that's when Catherine McGuinness first recommended that we should do this in the Kilkenny report. But of course our history in relation to children goes back decades. And we have a very poor history in relation to our most vulnerable children. We know that, but we also know that it has changed and is changing substantially. But there are still challenges. Child abuse, and I'm publishing today yet another audit from the HSE audit in relation to the church, where we do see improved practice in relation to addressing the issues around abuse, but we also see some delays in reporting allegations. And I have to say, I don't think that's confined to the church. I think that's an issue for us as a society generally, to be really sensitive to abuse issues, to report when we see what's going on, to do something. And that's why I'm bringing in Children First on a statutory basis, so that there's no ambivalence, because we have been so ambivalent about this. And the new Children First guidelines, the new Children First legislation, which we're working on, having got that 600-page report from the committee, I'm working to translate, if you like, that into legislation. That really is very important as well, because that says no ambivalence. You report if you're concerned. Key professionals have to report child sexual abuse, have to follow the guidelines. And you also have Minister Alan Shatter's legislation, which says if you withhold information, if you knowingly withhold information, for example, about sexual abuse, and you don't report it, and you know a crime is being committed, then you are potentially liable for a criminal charge. That legislation is actually in place since August. So I think strengthening the frameworks around this whole area of protection of children is really important as well. So it's about change at a constitutional level, it's about change at a practice level, and at a legislative level. And of course the question of resources is also an issue. And in the debate in the Dáil in the Senate, many TDs made the point, questioned. They were supporting constitutional change, but made the very accurate point. It's one part of change. Equally, it is about all of those other issues that I have mentioned. So just to repeat, and as I say, I know this is a very expert audience on what we're trying to do in relation to the amendment, but just to repeat, it is about protecting children from abuse and neglect. It is about greater clarity about when you intervene and how you intervene, that you intervene in a proportionate way, that's incredibly important, but that you do look at the impact on the child as opposed to just the parental failure. It's not about other things. It's not about incorporating the UN Convention into our legislation, far from it, in the sense that the Convention is a very broad document, endorsed by every country in the world, by the way, one of the most widely accepted human rights documents. And of course that has influenced the work and the behaviour of this state over the last decade. Of course it has, and it should, because it's a strong statement of human rights. In terms of our amendment, though, we have selected the key issues that have been worked on over decades, particularly by the All-Party Committee, and selected out the key issues that needed attention. So this amendment strengthens child protection, no question of that. It does not mean that the state wants to go and snatch any children. Far from it. The whole history in this country has been about supporting families and supporting children to stay in their families. And in fact, one of the issues we need to be clearer about is where damage is being done to the child, that we focus on that child and making the best decision for that child and not getting waylaid by other aspects of the child's life. So it's about that balance between the family, the child, and the protection of the child. So it's certainly not about wanting to in any way snatch children or interrupt quality family life. The focus is on protecting children. And it is necessary because, contrary to what has been stated, children do not have enough rights. That's why everybody who has examined this for the last 10 years in particular has said we need a particular article about the rights of the child. And that's what we've done with the first article in the new amendment. So that's what it is about. It is not about forced vaccinations. Of course it's not. We don't even have a legal obligation to have vaccinations in this country at the moment. It's certainly not about that. It's about what I've said it's about. And I want to thank you, as I say, for the role that you've played so far as a Children's Rights Alliance and your many member organisations, to say we have a serious piece of work to do over the next few weeks. No vote cast yet. We have to inform, we have to campaign, and certainly the political parties will be campaigning. We will be getting the information leaflet into every house in the country, and there will be advertisements encouraging people to come out to vote. So we will certainly play our part on the political side and look forward to working in partnership with you as the experienced NGOs that you are. So thank you very much indeed for the invitation to be here today.